I didn't play Everhood 1, but I liked what I saw of Everhood 2 and that others were interested in it, so I decided to give it a try. It's easy to be drawn into Everhood 2 because of its art style. It reminded me of EarthBound and SNES era games in general. I thought it featured visually appealing pixel work, and overall, I enjoyed taking in the varied/colorful visuals. It was like that for the majority of EH2, but there were parts that were absolute visual overloads, and I loved that. In general, I'd say that's another reason why I was drawn to EH2. It takes what it does and goes over the top with it. Besides being drawn in by EH2's visuals, I also liked its tone/atmosphere. Its kooky dialogue was really reminiscent of Undertale, but seeing how the bulk of EH2 is, I'd say that Undertale's influence is seen all over the place. I know that there are other games out there that have wild visuals and dialogue, but one of the reasons why I enjoyed Undertale as much as I did was because of how it had a lot of varied gameplay. Filling up your game with content could in some ways be seen as easy, but making it feel fulfilling isn't. It's like that with Undertale, but not to the same extent as EH2, and that affected how I thought of the latter. Don't get me wrong, I appreciated most of what EH2 has to offer, but after a while I just wanted to move on. Not only did I want to move on, it's possible I didn't see the real ending, or at least the one that I was heading towards. I saw the credits roll, so I consider it beaten. I say that because EH2 continuing after I beat it left me thinking it's drawn out. I replayed through an earlier part of the game, mainly to see if EH2 was steering me towards an unexpected destination, but that wasn't the case. It's possible that was the point of EH2 continuing soon after I saw the credits roll, but I wasn't up for putting up with a decent chunk of the game all over again. It's kind of how some people will say that a game is good after 5 hours or so. There have been instances where I put up with slow or straight up bad sections of a game only to end up considering it a great game, but it's different when the end of the game is like that. It could be that I've brought up this topic too soon, but you'll see why I decided to put EH2 down after 17 hours or so of gameplay. When I was first introduced to the meat and potatoes of the gameplay, I felt that it was too easy to stay in one place. Needing to collect the same colors to build up an attack wasn't challenging for a decent amount of time. I started to change the more I went on, especially when I actually felt pushed to go into other lanes. I liked that because it eventually got to the point where things felt challenging. As a result of that, I was forced to juggle multiple different things at once, attempting to collect as many of the same colors as possible, figuring out which color was most effective against the enemy I happened to be facing, avoiding damage, and trying to be as mobile as possible. It was possible to be super mobile, seeing as how that part of EH2 offers a lot and is really responsive, but it's not like it was possible to jump around recklessly. Doing so usually led to taking damage, losing the number of colors I'd collected, and sometimes even dying. From that description, it seems like EH2's combat had a lot to offer, but it wasn't always that way. Early on in EH2, I straight up wanted more out of the battle experience. I'd grown to enjoy what I experienced of it, but I was left wishing that there were more random encounters. I'm not as up to date on how the current RPG/JRPG scene feels about this, but from what I've seen, it seems like moving away from random encounters is preferred nowadays. Don't get me wrong, offering too many random encounters back in the day was also met with criticism, but my point is that meeting somewhere in the middle would have been the ideal solution for me. The middle and end of EH2 started to feel more appropriate when it came to the frequency of enemy encounters. At times there were segments where I was having to deal with back-to-back fights. I preferred that over having to deal with decent stretches of time with no combat, but at that point it felt like too much within a brief amount of time. I understood that the closer I was to the end, the more challenging EH2 would be, but at times it felt like by then it was attempting to make up for what the beginning didn't do. It left me feeling like the combat part of the game felt lopsided. Chances are that another solution to this would be to simply get good. I don't consider myself amazing at EH2's combat, but I did manage to get a handful of achievements that were only possible after one-shotting enemies. One thing I didn't really enjoy about EH2 was how if I failed particular moments, my failure triggered an offset of the story. I straight up would have preferred having to repeat a part I failed. It's because I felt like my failures led to me making the game longer than it needed to be. It's possible that it wouldn't have been necessary to have put in over 17 hours to see the credits roll. Feels weird to be mentioning this because some out there may have greatly enjoyed this aspect of EH2, whereas I didn't. I guess I just wanted a straightforward experience instead of one that kept going on and on. The ongoing nature of EH2 at times made it hard to tell where the story was going. It didn't help that there were lengthy dialogue scenes that seemed to come unexpectedly. I'm sure that there are or will eventually be video essays analyzing everything about EH2. I got the basics of the story down, but when it started to go crazy about philosophy and metaphysics, that's when I more or less tuned out. It's not that I don't enjoy those subjects, I just wasn't drawn to EH2 because of those subject matters. I wanted more of the rhythm/platforming action. Maybe I would have felt differently had I played EH1, but I didn't. On the bright side, throughout most of EH2 I didn't feel too stuck. There were sections I had to repeat over and over again, mainly due to dying or not knowing how to find the right way out. I was fine with that because this didn't occur too frequently. For a decent chunk of EH2 it didn't feel as long as I'd played it for. That changed past its midpoint, and I'd say that it was easy to keep playing for around 50 to 60% of EH2. What started to bother me was how I didn't see a clear end in sight. At times that was more of a me problem, due to not being able to overcome certain fights, but it got worse when I realized that EH2 was like that on purpose. I don't think the point of EH2 was to be like that all the time, but when I saw that I needed to continue on past the credits, my motivation to continue decreased and eventually faded away. Chances are that I would have better enjoyed EH2 had it been more bare bones like Rift of the Necro Dancer. I say that not only because of having just recently played through it, but also because they're similar games with entirely different approaches. The story was present in Rift, but not to the degree as in EH2. In Rift, what you saw was what you got, but that wasn't the case with EH2. You had to dig into what EH2 showcased, and after a while I wanted less of that. I feel strange about some of the things I've brought up in this review because it comes off as if I'm complaining about issues that really weren't issues. I'd have to compare what others thought of it with my own thoughts, but that'll have to wait since I don't know what the general consensus is on Everhood 2. Everhood 2 is a game that offers plenty of good to the point where I can see others being drawn to it in the same way that I initially was. While that may be the case, I wouldn't be surprised to see others drawn away from it for similar reasons as the ones I mentioned. Either way, give it a try for yourself and see what you think. If you're not up for that, that's okay too. What are your thoughts about games that keep going after the credits have rolled? Are there any examples of games where you greatly enjoyed one aspect of it, but were turned off by others? If you enjoyed this content, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much for watching.